boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. This is Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things ready through a common sense lens. And we really have a crazy kind of little what if, will they, won't they kind of situation with Doctor Who, right? We've got a lot of rumors that have come out from places like The Sun that have been later confirmed by other people and others with other sources saying that essentially the entire crew that's been involved with Doctor Who has been told to go on, find other projects, don't hold your breath, don't sit around waiting thinking you're going to get a call anytime soon out there for this series to come back or for your jobs to come back or anything like that. And honestly, considering all of the will they, won't they, considering the lack of confirmation from Disney or BBC as far as if the show will continue as it's currently been going on, and with a special looming that's from Russell T Davies that has now been paid for by Disney coming out, I believe, either later this year or early next year or something like that. Obviously, it's one of those, maybe they're waiting again to make it a final decision or a final announcement as far as how things are going to end up going and whether or not the break from Disney and BBC is official after maybe that comes out, and maybe they don't want to taint what little potential they may or may not have with that special. Although I did watch the trailer, and it does seem to be a little bit more intriguing than some of the stuff we've seen in the past as well. But at the end of the day, boys and girls, you cannot deny that Doctor Who's ratings are in the toilet, right? Whether you want to blame a change in demographics, whether you want to blame a change in culture, or whether you want to blame Russell T Davies and the absolute abysmal writing that he's had over the last few years, or you can go all the way back to Chris Chibnall and blame the timeless child and everything he did with Dr. Karen and all of that kind of garbage nonsense. There's just no way to deny, though, that the ratings are in the worst state they've been in the show's 60-year history. And whether you love it or not, that's where things are. So I think any honest broker, I think any common sense fan out there would completely and totally understand why the show needs to be put on a shelf and take a little bit of rest. But boys and girls, despite all of the rumors, despite all of the craziness going on out there, the BBC is out there, well, finally admitting that Disney might not be involved going forward in any way, shape, or form, but that, of course, Doctor Who will continue. But in what form, in what way do they actually mean that? Because, of course, in some way, Doctor Who will have to continue at BBC. They'll still continue to produce merch. Big Finish will probably still end up producing a bunch of audio dramas. They'll still probably be trying to do things in comics and everything else to more or less failure for the most part because, well, the brand's been tainted by what Chris Chibnall and Russell T Davies have now done to the franchise. We thought Chris Chibnall, at least a lot of the fans out there, thought Chris Chibnall had destroyed the series. And based on the ratings, we were pretty much right. And then Russell T Davies comes back, the guy we thought was going to be the champion. We guys thought that was going to be the hero of the story and come back and reset things and get away from the identity politics and get back into good storytelling. And who knows, maybe even possibly reset some of the garbage destruction that they've done to the canon with Timeless Child and everything else. But no. Ladies and gentlemen, Russell T Davies told us flat out in interview after interview that his personal agenda mattered more than giving us good Doctor Who. And well, guess what? The ratings have proven that that's absolutely true and that's not what the fans want. But still, BBC is out there trying to put on a brave face because they simply cannot admit failure publicly. Because as you can see over here from the IGN headline, Doctor Who will continue with or without Disney, BBC insists, as wait for renewal drags on. So we're going to check this article from IGN.com, getting all of the juicy details of exactly what BBC says, and of course, what some other people in the Doctor Who universe are thinking about this thing as well, and some very fair points that they put out about maybe it's why it's time for Doctor Who to definitely take a rest. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2,100. We're sailing our way towards 22. I think we're sitting at like 2,164, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let me know what you think about all of this. Do you think BBC is just trying to save face? Do you think they're just trying to put a positive foot forward? Do you think they're just trying to keep a nice and bright, shiny face on the Doctor Who franchise? Or do you think they do mean this legitimately? They're going to do everything they possibly can to try to keep this franchise going in one form or another, even if it means a drastically reduced budget, even if it means a much more earthbound stories, even if it means the TARDIS doesn't actually move and go anywhere. Or do you think, like a lot of the rest of the fans do, is this just nothing more than a marketing scheme and trying for them to save face? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below, because as always, all opinions are welcome after all. And if you'd like to support the channel, check out the links in the description. All right, from Tom Phillips over at IGN.com. And to be completely and totally fair, IGN have obviously has been access media and like kind of shill media for a lot of years out there. But man, oh man, I don't know if it's Tom Phillips particularly, or if maybe it's somebody over in the editorial staff over there, but they are not having any problems right now. Just basically, essentially telling the truth and reading the room and seeing how things are. Now, are they going to come out there and say that it's because of all of the activism that drove the viewers away because they didn't want to be preached to about a bunch of nonsense that they don't really care about and yada, yada, yada? They just want to live their lives and have a good family-friendly internet show? No. None of the access media will ever admit that. But at least they're not believing all of the spoon-fed nonsense and lies that a lot of these major studios, BBC included, are trying to feed them. And for that, I can appreciate, and at least it's a step in the right direction. The TARDIS is going nowhere. Doctor Who will live on, with or without Disney, which means the BBC is admitting that there is indeed trouble in paradise, despite what all of the people in my comment section like to try to convince themselves of otherwise. The BBC is now set as the wait for the show's renewal continues. The BBC's big deal with Disney to co-fund the future of Doctor Who was trumpeted back in late 2022 as a fresh dawn for the veteran sci-fi series. Yeah, I was one of those stupid, ignorant, sweet summer child who thought that was going to happen too. And then that 60th anniversary anthology special happened. And yeah, no. Because after all, maybe it's just me, but maybe it was just me, but maybe if you were still a woman, you'd understand. You'd understand after all. But after just 2 seasons, released to a mixed response, well, that's a very nice way of saying the worst ratings in 60-year history. And the decision by star Ncuti Gatwa to stand down from the series title role. That's right. They're even admitting now that Ncuti Gatwa left because he understood, and according to all of the rumors we've been hearing, his agents understood that that was nothing more than a sinking ship and he needed to get off of it as fast as possible before attaining any kind of future career he may have in Hollywood. The silence around Doctor Who's future has prompted fan concern. Yeah, justifiably so. And speculation that the lengthy hiatus is now on the cards. You think? Because also, remind you, everybody, the BBC's funding is in the toilet right now as well because their ratings in the toilet. And the BBC has admitted several times and have had massive layoffs over the last few years because they're broke because they produced a bunch of garbage that nobody wants to watch. Now the BBC has publicly acknowledged a future where Disney is no longer tied to the series' production. A marked change from the broadcaster's previous hopes of a quick renewal. That's right, and Russell T Davies' Hail Mary of bringing Billy Piper in at the very last minute will not do them any good whatsoever. Any Whovians out there, rest assured, Doctor Who is going nowhere. BBC Chief Content Officer Kate Phillips said during the Edinburgh TV Festival as reported by Radio Times. Disney has been a great partnership, and it continues with spin-off series The War Between the Land and the Sea next year. Let me know, guys. Let me know, boys and girls. Should we review that on our When Who Was Good show on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time? Let us know in the comments section down below. But going forward, with or without Disney, Doctor Who will still be on the BBC. Well, I'm sure it will be. Just like Top Gear is still on the BBC, where you're now showing reruns of the original series featuring the original trio at its original time back in the day. What do you want to bet? We're going to end up in a few years seeing the exact same thing with Doctor Who. We might even see Classic Who return to that Saturday night time slot over there in the United Kingdom. I bet we might at least see a return to the Eccleston and the David Tennant eras. Mark that one down. If not in a few years, I'll gladly admit I was wrong. But hey, like I said, BBC's not exactly in a good spot, and I'm sure they're right. Doctor Who will still be on the BBC. After all, if you have iPlayer, you can go back and watch When Who Was Good, all of the classic episodes out there. On the other hand, the simple assertion that Doctor Who, a BBC show, will continue to be on BBC is hardly surprising. On the other, the fact that this has to be stated at all, let alone the public acknowledgement that Disney could possibly no longer be involved, has only raised fans' eyebrows further. I mean, it's basically her admitting that Doctor Who is in a bad place and they can't even convince Disney, arguably one of the most activist-friendly production houses out there, most of the activist-friendly companies out there, won't even help fund this anymore. Yeah, it's gotten that bad. And there's what hasn't been said. Here, any suggestion for when the next session of Doctor Who will be commissioned, filmed, and ultimately aired? It's because BBC can't afford it on their own, and no one else is willing to fund this. There is nobody out there willing to jump on this hand grenade and take it and help them. They just can't. And guess what? Despite their shiny optimism, if they can't find somebody to help fund this, it's not going to happen. Phillips wrapped up by stating, "The TARDIS is going nowhere." Perhaps an unfortunately worded statement that may ring closer to the truth. You think? You think? You know, it's kind of funny how they talk about like Freudian slips and how sometimes people just can't help but tell the truth when they're speaking. Yeah, I think her words may be a little more on the nose than she was intending to let out, boys and girls. Earlier this month, Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies admitted he was still in the dark regarding the series' future, and his future as well. Despite having scripts ready for its next season, "I'm not allowed to say what's happening with Doctor Who." Well, duh. "I don't know what's happening with Doctor Who." That's probably because nobody wants you back for any further iterations of Doctor Who after you gave them the lowest ratings in the 60-year history of the show ever. I mean, clearly somebody inside the BBC can still do math, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't see the massive cutbacks and the massive layoffs happening with that company. They would have just lied themselves directly into, I don't know, can a government-sponsored television company even go bankrupt? Right? I mean, we cut ties with the broadcasting company, and now that thing went bankrupt. But if the government's going to keep funding it, can they even really go bankrupt? I don't know. But they can drastically reduce the content they produce because they're broke. And it sounds like Doctor Who may very much be on the big bucket for that one. Davies has said, "I don't know, because the conversations are between the BBC and Disney." Yeah, and if rumor be true, Disney's one condition for even considering funding this is getting rid of you. Making sure that you are bye-bye, gone. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Don't call us. We won't call you. Yes, it was you and not us. So yeah, doesn't surprise me that Russell T Davies doesn't know dick. Well, he clearly knows that very well. I mean, after all, Ncuti Gatwa did complain that the series was hard on his knees. Amid criticism of the series' writing and story arcs, Doctor Who actor and writer Mark Gatiss recently suggested the show was in need of a rest. And I think the majority of the fan base can agree with that as well. And as questions remain around the future of the BBC's deal with Disney, it was perhaps notable that plans for an animated Doctor Who spinoff have been announced for the kids' channel TBs without Disney being on board. And what did Gatiss say? Because I think this is very fitting from his as well. It's been back for 20 years, which is an awfully long time. Almost as long as its original run, which was 26 years. Shout out to Spartacus for that one. That's pretty spectacular. So maybe it's time for another rest. And yes, I think we all can definitely agree with that one. I really don't know. I only know that I still love the show with all my heart. But the real follow-up question should have been, Mark, are you still watching? What's been your favorite episode of the Ncuti Gatwa time as the Doctor? Because even BBC's own podcast admitted that they don't watch the show unless they're forced to for a review or something like that. So why would I expect Mark Gatiss to do anything any different? The fans clearly didn't. And BBC now has to admit that they're going to do their best to keep the show going with or without Disney, which they said BBC will always have Doctor Who on its network. And yes, I completely agree. Just like Top Gear. is still on the BBC to this very day with Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Adam Ham. Oh, wait, I don't think his name's actually Ham, but Adam Ham out there. So Mark Ham. So it's one of them situations where Richard Ham, there we go. Richard Ham, it's still on. Top Gear absolutely still lives on the BBC, just like Doctor Who will continue to live on the BBC in reruns, you know, and in series and episodes that fans actually love and will go back and rewatch over and over and over again. But the future of Doctor Who? Well, clearly Disney's out unless BBC kowtows and gives them what they want, which might be the only hope the show really has. Because at the end of the day, I don't think there's anyone else in the world foolish enough to try to pick up the bill for this. So yes, BBC's right. Doctor Who will continue. But in what form is really the question? And in the form of a new series, especially Russell T Davies running the show anytime soon? Yeah, boys and girls, I think we can pretty much confirm there is no way in Hades that is ever going to happen because BBC is broke. Russell T Davies and the rest of the executives over there have done it to themselves. And after all, it's exactly what they deserve. Doctor Who is dead, boys and girls, and the BBC and Russell T Davies killed it. Rest in peace, and join us on Sundays for When Who Was Good. A big shout out to all of our subscribers and members out there. Thanks for watching, and make sure you guys like and subscribe if you have not already.